Hi, welcome to my video. I'm Jennifer Roberts. This is another pondering, another writing on the wall, just more observations. Take of them as you will and don't take as you won't. So I want to talk about the danger of the outside saviour and try and correlate that to now, to this modern day. And so the ideology has been around for a long time that in varying different religions that you serve this god or this god or this, you know, it's very tunnel visioned. And so that was part of, and you know, there's always this son, you know, or this person to praise that is sort of a gatekeeper to that in most cases. And so this has been a long-standing thing now that I think humans have been afflicted with, in that they are indoctrinated, and because time has gotten on, we don't remember that we know about it, but because it just hasn't been experienced fully by us, even though it's experienced around the world quite a lot in the name of organized religion, the violence, the fear, the torture to confirm and conform to a certain religion. And it may depend completely on where you live, whether you even do it as a life-saving tactic still today. So it's not that that has gone, but in a lot of the parts of the world, the surface layer at the very least isn't seemingly as violent or seemingly as atrocious as our ancestors went through. And so it's been around for a long time, so it's become a part of our consciousness, even for a lot of those who have turned away from organized religion and have learned a lot more about themselves and gone down a much more holistic spiritual path. Still have, I find, in a lot of ways, this strand now of consciousness, still of the outside savior. And in most cases that I find, when you're coming out of an organized religion, Christianity I know very well of, and it's a cult to me, there's a lot of debriefing with self. There's a lot of extractions of very limited ways of thinking that you need to go through. You go through a grieving process of losing something that a lot of people have put their whole lives and built their whole lives around the representation of. And so there's a lot of ongoing things that we do need to look at to extract that from us. And so, but even if you haven't been brought up in an organized religious cult, you you still have a huge strand of this consciousness, because it is so ingrained in so many parts of the world prevalently, that there's this outside savior complex that I feel as humans we really have to deal with, and we have to deal with real quick, in order to stop what powers that brings to so-called powers that be, so-called controllers, and whatever might be behind them again. And so this is where I really feel as a collective, it would be one, truly healing, and two, very much empowering, and three, very much taking power back from those that steal it via this process. And so we find that, you know, in a lot of cases, organized religion is behind a lot of the financing and setup of what we see today. And so we've moved from most people going to church or whatever, depending on where you live. Most people having a sort of this belief system, even if you don't go, you'll write down a certain religion on the form that you have to fill out. We find that that has been moved into what you see as influencers, whether that be people in Hollywood, whether that be people in Bollywood, whether that be people on Instagram, whether that be people in the newspapers, in fashion, on Facebook, whatever it might be, still on TV. There's these influencers which means they influence something, they influence a trend, therefore they influence the people who are using that trend to, I don't know, describe themselves, define themselves, but they're defining themselves in the image of the controller of the, I realise this might be a bit of a nitty gritty thing, so I'm lighting the lavender and sage. So it might be a bit of a triggering thing, a triggered response to this, because we don't like to think of it this way, but we do have this sense of being influenced if we fall into the trap of being influenced. And then in politics, you have it. So if we look at, and I don't know very many Hollywood people or influencer named people, so I'm probably not name them by names. But if you look at, how do I share the screen? Let's see. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So if we look at what has happened, in that we have been hugely influenced by, if we put, oh, what pen is on? I should have had this done before, sorry. Yeah, no, that won't do. Hold on. I'll get this done in Jiffy. Come on, bear with me, please. I want that one, and I want that size up. Oh no, goodness me, this thing. I need to remember the pens, for goodness sake. Let's see, where are you? Wow, smoke's good. Okay, come on. I want pen. It's a pen. Good. So if you've got, so if we put Instagram, and we've got, say, influencers where it is boobs and bums, let's say, all the B's, let's put and body. And all of these entail a certain look. So maybe boob job, maybe unrealistically slim, and maybe a butt lift. And most of all, a big old pout. How do you spell pout? No, it's that, isn't it? A big old pout. And so then what we have is that we have a lot of people then looking at what they're wearing, saving and going for boob jobs, butt lifts, and a lot of people, unfortunately, will fall under the category of not realizing that some bodies are unrealistic and so unattainable without a lot of editing, without a lot of clever lighting. And so you'll find yourself now that we've got a huge subsection of adults and children alike more damaging because we've got such an excess of this, and because we have built a space for them, and the so-called powers that be have influenced this through TV and whatnot, through the different roles that they give and the depictions that they give of them, because we then have allowed that space to be created, and we've allowed it into our consciousness and deemed it as important. It therefore has started to influence a huge crowd, and that influences their decisions. So you have kids not eating, you have them overly exercising, you have them maybe I don't know, get into the point where they're maybe making themselves sick by not eating enough of the nutritious stuff that they need as they're growing up, or quite literally. And so then you see that they're also influenced on the way they look at themselves, so self-image, because a lot of the section of the community that this all influences, it is either young people who can't afford to have a boob lift and butt lift, as they shouldn't be having anyway, but they don't feel that way. But then also you have people getting into either really a lot of unhappiness with themselves because they are still looking at the same Instagram model and they're still being influenced by it, but actually their monetary status, their financial status in general is either that they can't afford it at all, or they are having the effects of a lot of debt because it is you know, they've gone into finance to get this look, to get this what they are influenced by and are in adoration of. That is their outside savior. But it influences a lot of places in the market that encouraged this space, this character to bloom all over social media. So it influences them because they get the payoff of it. They get the payoff of people being so upset with themselves that they want dietary aids, they want medications, they actually want surgeries, surgical procedures. So it's money all round. And it means that this is such a cult-like following. I didn't even realize how much. It's such a cult-like following that you find that these people are very tunnel vision. So they are distracted hugely to what is actually going on in the world, what is actually affecting others in that world, and actually what is affecting them in that world. So all of these things serve the so-called powers that be, because in this distraction, they're not looking at what the so-called powers that be are making the laws on, or making the rules on, or which parts of the society they're oppressing, or which parts of the society they're uplifting this time. There's a distraction. They're only influenced by this and only focused on this. And so it has a huge impact on the holistic nature of whoever is in this section of society, but it also has a huge impact on the fact that, one, we don't have their numbers in the collective to aid in any great change for the many, and two, they'll go with whatever then trends with that influencer. So we saw influencers over this time influencing people by wearing masks, wearing designer masks, and wearing masks that work even less. And also people were buying masks, so that, you know, that was a big profit for many. And also they were, in my eyes, with this gestational spell, giving consent of what the gestational spell meant, and giving consent just as a physical feature as to what was going on. Then we've got the they influenced people on, maybe let's put this, I don't know if that's very clear, maybe a pointy thing there, there, you know, like that kind of thing. They would be then influencing people on, you know, staying indoors, keep people safe. So they had that kind of influence on people. So stay in, grandializing the whole process of it, of being able to say that, you know, you're doing yourself, you know, a Pride of Britain type award thing by doing all of these things that were deliberately influencing you on. So of course that then serves this, because the numbers go up, the dedication goes up, they're all in it together. And of course, the profit of all of that goes up. It goes up to the so-called powers that be. So then we've got, so that's a huge part of the collective sorted out for where we are today, to be distracted, to be caught up in themselves, to be part of something, whilst also not realizing, because they're so influenced on being a part of whichever influencer this is on there, because they're so influenced, they didn't even realize that they were signing up and being a huge part of what seems to be, to me, a gestational spell, and also a great big plan. And then we've got, let's just take another example. So we've got, let's go there. Let's go to politics. Let's go to politics. So what have we got? We've got a huge amount of people who, and this, I don't really care, but this is not whether he's good or bad. This is just what the role did. Whether that was other people influencing that role, and it opened the space for it to be influenced. So let's say we've got a big old T in the middle there. And so we've got this space, because people were so desperate anyway for an outside savior to come in. We've got this very dynamic, we've got this very dynamic man who has been in the headlines and has been on the periphery, a huge hit for a lot of people anyway. So half of the job is already done for him to go in and fill that space. Is of the same caliber of financial status and some dodgy deals, but he is of the same character, of the same group of people. But because he's slightly labeled slightly differently and continue to push that label of being not the same as the politicians that have been before him and that are around him now, it fed into this very different breed of dynamic man coming in. Now, whether he's good or bad, that they could be really good characteristics in that role. But whether he's good or bad, that space was opened up. Now, what did it do? It meant that the way that he was depicted, so the way that that role was encapsulated via mainstream media, we've got that they caused a lot of this division by having a few support, but on the main attack. And so on the main being attacking, that was the trigger point for us to open up space even more in the consciousness of the people, to accept this man, because this means for people who believe in something, or even just are starting to, or feel that an attack is unjustified, there's still enough people in the world that will run to the defense of, i.e. in the support of this man who is being attacked. So that really was the clinching point, that really was the clincher of it all, to say, yeah, he's got a solid fan base now. And so that solid fan base, the more that this attack occurred, they know, they've studied us enough, the more that this attack occurred, the more the protective nature of this man. So therefore, the more defense of whatever was said or done, and the more defense of anything that then falls around this man. Now, this man might not be involved in what falls around him, but because that space has been opened up, the danger is all of a sudden this man, because of the spell work that MSM does, becomes a savior, and was depicted as such and said as such, that, you know, the savior. So then that space is really filled now, just as it would be in the church. It's filled. It's clinched in. That's great spell work. And then we've got, so then this Saviour, the attack continues. So the defense continues. And the adoration of, because then the adoration of bravery in the sight of bullying. And that's not to say that that wasn't depicted, but it's just bolstering that spell to clinch people into the outside Saviour, outside of self complex. And what else would it be? Attack, Saviour. It would increase in hope, because then you feel like you're actually doing something. You're in defense of somebody who is going to do something. So then hope continues. What else have we got? I can't think of anything else just now. So when this Saviour complex then enters in, things, very clever things, can fall around him. So let's say this falls around him. Now, I'm not saying whether he had, this dynamic man had anything to do with this at all. But I'm not saying he hasn't either. But I'm not saying that he has in the way that was depicted. Because to me, this was one of the cleverest psyops ever. Because it gave some valid truths, which meant that it was then bolstered in the light of, because it was attached to this dynamic man, and it was also attached to this Saviour complex, because this here, all it went on about was trust, not working down there, trust the plan. So then the plan in people's minds became this, and mostly only this. And so even if people who supported this dynamic man didn't subscribe to it, they knew somebody who did, or they heard of somebody who did, or they worked with somebody who did. So again, just like the collective consciousness of the Saviour complex that is left over in the collective that doesn't go to organised religion but is still affected by it, in the collective of organised religion, you're still affected by it, because it's still around enough that it absorbs in. And so this really did what the Instagram influencers did, distracted completely and bolstered, because it's trusting in a plan, trust in God, all of those things being linked very much in the consciousness of nearly everybody, if not everybody, to varying extents. This bolstered this Saviour name, this Saviour complex, which meant in a huge way, people got influenced, that they felt like they were going against the plan that was, that they were told to trust in the plan that was against the plan. So they felt like they were going against the plan, because they were getting some truths, remember, that could be proved out. And also it turned into literally a game. People love games. People love puzzles. Kids, adults alike love puzzles. And this became into like a Sudoku game or a chess game. So people were distracted, just like the influencers managed to get people distracted, whether they were deliberately doing it or not, consciously or not. The machine, the so-called powers that be, is gleaming off it, is using all of that. And so they were hugely distracted. They felt like they were going against the plan, but actually, you know, very little that they did affected to non-effect. Very little did affected the plan, as we see today. They felt safe. So actually this whole, which is where that I'm saying the others are using this, regardless of who is involved in what within this character, the others, the above, the more established or the hidden, are using it to a great extent, because then they can see that those people are distracted. So they also have the relaxation of knowing that, because though they were giving him attacks in mainstream, the support was palpable around the world, because people were all playing this game. And so what they did there was, it meant that people felt safe in their savior, safety. And so it bred even more complacency, because this distraction continued because of this game and the slogan, trust the plan. They felt safe in the hands of this dynamic man who's now become a savior. And so where this safety really didn't help the very man that they loved so much or loved so much, it actually meant that they thought they would win. And so people, although seemed like they were on the go and on the being proactive about it, actually they were resting back a bit, because they were engrossed in this game, and there was the safety to win. And so it actually, whether to what extent I don't know, would have had an effect maybe. Now, even then they can come out, because they've conformed everybody who was within this aspect of it, just like the Instagram aspect, because they've conformed you to a spell, this savior complex, trusting in the plan so much that you felt safe. People are then broken when they don't get that win that was promised. Broken people don't fight as well against something, don't be as brave or making as much noise about something as when they're angry, as when they feel not only like they have the proofs, like they have the receipts, confident. When they're confident and angry, it's much harder to ignore a confident and angry crowd. Now, because this savior complex spell went so far and wide and was so strong, now they have the gleam of effect, you know, the foam off the top, the profit off the top. Now they have the fact that it's very easy to trap those people who were in this this process, this spell. It's very easy to trap these people, because the support was vehement throughout before people got broken. And because there was so much attention in mainstream media, it meant that the rest of the country who wasn't around this letter, the rest of the country was looking at a lot of news, and it would always be a trap, like a photograph of somebody drunk, being abusive, and we'll all see them, you know, when there's get-togethers of any kind, whether it's a concert, a rally, or whatever. You see them where they're being abusive, they're being loud, and they're being just all round pathetic and nasty. Well, the trap is that they can get the photograph of that, and because the support has been vehement, it's not so unbelievable to the rest of the people who aren't under this to see that one person capsulate the whole side, the whole support of this letter here. And then we saw the trap on the 6th that I called out, and so the 6th trap. And you know, people who are discerning, people who aren't in another trap, the other side who thinks they're discerning will not listen to this guy that they have in their consciousness, this photographed guy that they have in their consciousness of being allowed, being abusive, being, you know, just down and out at a rally, or even just outside of a rally. It doesn't really matter. they've got this in the consciousness so much that they're not listening. They're deaf to any news that would say no, it was a trap. These people don't even belong to him. They don't even aren't even in support of him. And no matter what evidence you show them, and there is evidence that this was this on this date for sure, it's then trapped people on that side, on this side, even more into this context of this photographed guy who has been all over the news. So people become deaf to the cause, they become deaf to what these people actually stand for, even outside of him. Because now that side, in the other side's consciousness, this is that whole side dead to them. They're deaf to anything that side does now, no matter what good person comes up behind, no matter how great they are, no matter how much change they do. That side now is deliberately so part of this trap. It's stained in the consciousness of people. So of course, the very people who were in real support of this, and actually it's funny that rap even, so they use the same influencers as well. I'll get to that throughout all of these different threads. The same the different influencers, sorry, but doing the same role, will drift into each other in support, you know, and so they go across boundaries even. So they really do tie us down with fabulous spell work. And so not fabulous in a good way for what it does, but fabulous in the how clever and how expansive it is. And so actually rap people came out in support of T. Now, didn't T release rap people who were incarcerated before he left? And so again, that, you know, brings us into another genre. So we go into, let's go into music. Music is the recipe, where that came from. So music. So there we've got that wave coming in from this side, this influencer here. We've got now music with rap. So we have a feedback going on where we've got rap artists coming and speaking out in support of T, and we've got then T coming out in support of these in music. And so now it goes across this boundary. And so with this, we've got people who are influenced in the obvious, whatever the mainstream is allowing to go out prevalently. I love rap, but you know what is in the mainstream rap, you know, we know what it's doing. There's enough evidence to show that. But people they don't look at what is the music, what is the hertz of the music, what are the words of the music. They don't look at that. They just get so encapsulated in whatever figure this puts forward. And that goes for pop. It also goes for rock. I feel not so much rock, but rock, yeah, for sure. And a load of others. And then we've got, so what we've got here is all of these different influences in here for the danger of the savior complex today, all did certain things in that they were all wearing the masks, you know, they're begging people to save lives by getting the you-know-what. They are, you know, doing photo shoots in their mansions, you know, saying stay at home. So all of these people now, to a great extent, not all, but, you know, to a great extent, many of these people in many of these sectors are supporting the political plan that may be the other political parties' plan all along, or maybe both. Supporting the plan and reinforcing and making people, reinforcing the rules, making people more controllable. making people more controllable, making people conform, because they are influenced by their saviors. So there's a biofeedback going through all of these now, all for this, you know, the few things that they want to achieve during this plan, during this gestational spell. So the danger with this is that now they've got people, because we've allowed this savior complex to go on, and it didn't start with Hollywood, it didn't start with influencers on Instagram, it didn't start with politics, even the church. It started with the church. So these things, there's no judgment to what I'm saying. Take it as you will, but there's no judgment to what I'm saying. I'm just saying these things I don't feel are the natural way of what we predominantly lived like, with our feelings of connection to source. I don't feel that we had this. In fact, none of the ancient texts would say, you know, we had got this one God. The gods and goddesses and energy of that and essence of that. And so, and that can go way, way back. You can then go back to the Anunnaki and start to question that, but there wasn't just one of them. And so this is where it started. So there's no judgment here, but I've got to be honest, it's an observation that we do need to get it fixed, because during this gestational spell, we have seen the force and power that all of these influences wield over the people. And all of these influences are somehow, some way part of, entrenched with the so-called powers that be. And so many people who would have worked together to make a change, to make a noise, a balanced noise about what's going on right now, about this plan, because maybe we don't want to look at, or we feel a bit triggered by the fact that we think we've done so much work moving away from organized religion, for those of us in the spiritual community that have done so, that we don't want to think that there are seeds that can be regerminated, you know, and come back up, the shoots come back up, if the right influencer that would represent the savior within that within that seed pops up and is put in the right places. And so this is where we've given over still, because we maybe haven't been brave enough to have discussions like this, to say that there are still parts of us that have that seed of either consciousness, because we've been very much heavily involved with the church, or whether that's just because we absorb it via, we all know people that are, or even just the amount of people that it's still enforced. And let's face it, the church still enforces a lot of power through political systems, through science. It's got a lot of clout through royalty. In fact, it is in control of that. So we're still being affected, obviously, because I don't know how many people have said to me that are older than me, that are the same age as me, can remember a time when there was so many strong divides. You know, they can maybe talk about a time when this side was divided against that side, but it didn't have all of these subsections of divides that look so different and act so different, that people don't put two and two together as to what they actually are, and what the feedback is, and how much that feedback from all of these seemingly very different influencers or influential groups, what that biofeedback is, and that it stops right at the powers that be. The people, hold on, I'm going to share again, the people like this, that that owns so much, that has profited from it, that has profited from what's going on, from all of these people, and I can name more and more and more, but all of these people have profited hugely from what's going on, and all of these subsections of influencers have done their part to feed back the confirmation, the control, the distraction to these. So the dangers of us having connections to outside saviors outside of self, the dangers of having that deep seated value system of self, and therefore still looking for a savior outside of self, when the seed germinates again, whatever it is from the outside that triggers it to grow again. When we've got this, obviously we can see now, for those that can see, the physical impact and the physical power that we actually give through the savior complex and distraction to these so-called powers that be, that are implementing the very plan that we're against the most, the very changes that we're against the most, the very dangerous times that we face if we continue to not be honest with one another and see what is happening and connecting the dots, particularly with these big plans, what I call big spells. And so, and also on a spiritual level, I really feel, I know that this complex does not do us any favors as we level up and transition through what we call the death process. It doesn't do us any favors spiritually as a leveling field in this reality, in this physical reality, both spiritually and, like I've said before, physically, because we feel the physical impacts of this every single day, and we have for a long, long time. And so all of this needs to be addressed, and it takes all of us as individuals to address this and really look within and find if we have any savior complex seeds within that we need to extract to then take our power back from outside forces that would seek to seep it away, and to be super discerning about it, super honest and super non-judgmental to self about it, because these people for a long, long time, especially from the church going forward, this for a long, long time has been gaining roots and becoming rooted in our consciousness before we even birth ourselves into here, because the mother and father has been conscious of it. The grandfather and grandmother has been conscious of it. So this isn't a judgmental thing of self at all, but it is a be real honest with self thing, because I feel like if we didn't have too many of these seeds within self over these last 2 years, this plan, like they've done many times before, would have been aborted, because they wouldn't have been able to continue on with this without this huge biofeedback of all of the things I listed and more. I didn't cover everything that I had in my mind before I came on, but all of these things that I listed and more that work in their favor. And so that would have all been taken out. Imagine if all of that energy and all of that time and distraction had been taken out of this whole game plan. This whole game plan would have crashed. They would have not been able to do it, because that would have given us back a huge amount of people in the collective who would have seen this plan, because they haven't had to be that careful. They've just been very clever at controlling the mind and the reactions that follow after that. We would have been able to see it. It would have been like the vampires coming out of the shadows. And we all would have seen those teeth. We all would have looked, and we all would have said, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why do you have so much control over our world? Why this doesn't feel real safe? We would have had all of that expansive vision right on the people. And what's behind them. We would have been able to see it clearly. So that's the chat that I had to give. Take of it as you will. I know some people might not like it, but because it's not comfortable. But it's only not comfortable because you're if you feel that way, and you have been involved in organised religion in particular, it's not a pleasant journey unindoctrinating yourself out of that. And so to sometimes have to look and face that I need to go within again about that, actually. Nobody wants to do that, very eagerly. And also there's still the complex of, is there something within you that isn't your true savior? That yes, you can give others accolade and give others love and be of service to others, please. But to go into the worship area, to go into the savior complex area is dangerous. And so it's a difficult thing to look at. So again, take of it as you will. I love you all, regardless of the reaction. I've just got to put this out here because I know it would have helped, and it will help still in the future for whatever else they bring. And also it will help spiritually for the spiritual leveling up, which is so important now, and as we move on through different dimensions, different realms. I love you all. Mwah. See you soon.